My name is Josh Talley, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town called Pumpkin Town, South Carolina, and my dad was a preacher in that town. So I grew up with the label of preacher's kid, and so did my two sisters. But you know, with the term preacher's kid comes a lot of weight and a lot of expectations just by the name preacher's kid. You know, the people in the church expect you to behave a certain way and to act a certain way, and really that nobody can live up to those expectations. But I carried that weight, and so every time that I would not meet the expectation, I felt guilty, and I felt like that I was to blame for things. And that's when the church hurt really began at a young age, because I was always seeking approval from people, from my parents, and from the church, and I could never live up to those expectations. And I remember at a young age, the church tried to run my dad off, and that was a very hurtful time for me and my family, for the things that were said about us and the things that were said about my dad. And from that point on, I didn't want anything to do with the church. The church didn't have anything to offer me, and regardless what I was going through, I wasn't going to go to the church for help. So at the age of 15, I found weed and alcohol for the first time. And, all of a sudden, all the insecurities, the fear, the guilt all went away with weed and alcohol. And I'd found my answer, and I wasn't going back. And so from that day forward, drinking and drugging was just who I was. It's a part of who I was. It took away my anxiety, my insecurities. It allowed me to talk to people, to talk to girls. And it just continued to escalate and to progress. And I'll never forget, after a heartbreak in a relationship, that I realized that I wasn't going to allow anybody to hurt me again like that. I'd already been hurt by the church, and now I've been hurt by people. And I realized that alcohol couldn't hurt me. So I found all the answers to any problem I was going through in the bottom of a bottle. But addiction stole 17 years of my life, from alcohol to cocaine to crack to meth to ecstasy to acid. You name it, I tried it. And I was always searching for more, and for more. And nothing was ever enough, but it got me by. But after 17 years, it takes a toll on your body. And I remember one night, one of my friends told me that he was worried about me, that I wasn't doing good, I didn't look good. And I'm so grateful that he told me that night, because of what he said, that he had the nerve to tell me, and really the love to tell me that I didn't look good. That's the reason I checked into the Phoenix Center. And I'm just so grateful that someone actually loved me enough to tell me that. And so I checked myself into the Phoenix Center, and like every addict, I try to leave after 48 hours because I thought that I had this thing figured out, that I was going to be okay. But I remember I had a conversation with a gentleman there who told me that he was worried about me, that if I left the Phoenix Center, that he didn't think I was going to make it back, or that I was even going to make it at all, and that I should stay. So I listened to this man. And funny story, when I went back a year later after I got out, that the man that I had the conversation with, there's no man that matches the description of that person. And I truly believe that it was an angel sent by God to convince me into staying, and that God intervened there. Because shortly after that, they rushed me to the hospital, and I had brain anemia, alcoholic liver cirrhosis, end-stage liver disease, and I was literally 3 to 6 months away from drinking my liver to mush. And I remember there in that hospital bed was where I finally hit my lowest of lows. Everybody has a breaking point, and mine was strapped down to a hospital bed. I couldn't get up to use the bathroom. I had to use the bathroom in the bed, and I just remember the nurses telling me that they were going to take care of me. And so as I lay there in my bed of shame, per se, I didn't know how I was going to do life without my best friend, Jack Daniels, my best friend, alcohol. And I didn't know what life looked like, because that's all I ever knew since the age of 15. But, I got out, and I tried the marijuana maintenance program for a year. And fortunately, I stumbled into a meeting at New Spring Recovery. And I met a man named Alan Cothran, who was able to speak to me, to speak into the things that I was going through, because he had experienced the similar things in his life as well, and he could relate with me. And he advised me that the marijuana maintenance program wasn't going to work because I was still trying to cover up something deep within, that there was something deep within that I needed to get out. And God was so gracious to put people like Alan Cothran from New Spring and Bradley Saxon at the Bridge Center and Richie Reese at Crossway Ministries in my life to be able to speak into things and to draw out whatever it was that was causing my addiction. The why behind the actions that I was taking. And it was uncomfortable to work the 12 steps and to go through counseling, but it actually dug out a lot of things that were within me. And we were able to find that, the reason that I was so insecure, the reason I felt guilt, and the reason I felt shame, and the reason I believed lies about myself was because at the age of 8 that I was sexually molested. And I never told anybody that. And I was going to carry that to the grave with me. Like, I swore I would never tell anybody. And I was able to finally confess that, to finally address it, to finally forgive that person. And I worked the 12 steps of AA and made amends with people and forgave people, which was really hard to do, but it was so freeing to do. And so I'm so grateful that God put those people in my life, because that's really what elevated me to where I am today and allowed me to be free from those things, and for people not to hold me in bondage anymore just because of my unforgiveness for them. And since then, I met my wife in recovery, and I'm the luckiest man alive. I remember she came into a meeting at New Spring Recovery, and that's where we met, and we started doing ministry together, and then eventually we got married and have 3 beautiful kids. I have more than I could ever imagine or ask for. And God's been so good to really make my path straight, that he's always been there, whether I knew he was there or not. He was always there. And even in the pit of my addiction, whenever I didn't even care anything about God and I'd really thrown the middle finger to him, God was still there. And he was waiting for the moment that I was ready to receive help. And once I did, and I found counsel, and then I met my wife, and now we're both clean and sober for over 4 years together, and we get to do life together, that our family is a testimony of God's resurrecting power, of his restoration, and what an honor it is to get to share our testimonies with people, because there's a lot of people out there who may not struggle with substance abuse, but who struggle with some sort of addiction, regardless what it is, whether that's codependency or eating, whatever it is, Lord. And I'm just so grateful today that God gave us a story of brokenness, and that he pulled us out of the pit, and that he welcomed us home, and that he gave us a hug. Like, I think about the prodigal son, and that really is my story, is that I left, wanted all my inheritance, and I left the church, and I didn't want anything to do with God. And I came to myself one day in the pit, in the hospital. I came to myself one day, and I realized I could go back and I thought that I could just be a servant for God, but he met me on the road. He ran and met me, and he kissed me, and he hugged me, and he welcomed me back into the family, and he threw a party for me, and he gave me a ring and a robe, which is my new identity in him. And that is my story, is that God always was there, and he was always waiting for me to come back so that I could share my story with other people. And now what an honor it is that my wife and I get to do ministry together. We get to bring hope to the hopeless. We get to bring the message of Jesus to those who need help, because Jesus is the answer to addiction. And I'm just so grateful today that my story can be used to bring hope to people. And I hope that you find hope in my story, that you will reach out for help, that you'll know that you're not alone, and you don't have to do life alone. You weren't created to do life alone. And there's a community of people that are waiting with open arms to help you and to help guide you out of your addiction, so that you can find forever freedom from your addiction and walk in that freedom in this life that you now live. Thanks for listening to my story.